Hello and welcome to another SecurityMetrics podcast. My name is Jen Stone. I'm one of the principal security analysts here at SecurityMetrics, and I'm extremely excited about where we are today. We're recording here at the PCI community meeting for North America in Portland, Oregon. And with me today, I'm welcome to this podcast. Please tell the audience a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll launch into the topic.
Thanks, Jen. I'm Wes Shattler with FIS. I've been with FIS now for 27 years, based out of Orlando, Florida. I'm a lifelong Floridian, and so I've been a resident there all my life. And with the company, I started out as a developer, conversion analyst. So I started learning how to code things, how to do programmatic issues, and just basically taking care of things from a programmatic standpoint. After a while, I got into the governance and risk area, and so around 2006, they had something come up called PCI, and somebody said, "Who would like to learn how to do a PCI framework?" And I did the very first PCI assessment we did at FIS back in 2006. So I've been in this role now, leading the assurance and testing for about 10 years.
That's a lot of experience in that area. Well, welcome. And Chelsea?
Hi, Jen. Yes, thank you. My name is Chelsea Lopez. I'm also with FIS. I am a risk director overseeing our PCI compliance program globally. At FIS, our PCI program covers more than 70 assessments a year, 70 PCI DSS assessments a year. So very versed in how we maintain that compliance year round and not just doing individual sprints. Additionally, we are assessed against the other standards within PCI. So overall, we have about 120 reports a year that we work with QSAs on. And I had come in. Yes, it is mind blowing when we talk about it. I had come into this role starting with FIS about 10 years ago in internal audit. And then there was a position that had opened up to be in our operational risks team. So we were really liaisons between the business and then the formal risk management program and our third-party auditors. So I worked in that, got to work with individual business units, and a position opened up on Wes's team to go and work with the program globally. So I moved over into that role. So very excited to be here and love talking about it, PCI.
Well, welcome, and I'm really excited about this conversation for a couple of reasons. First of all, there were a few very specific people that the council wanted to have talked and really elevate the message of what you were already talking about. You know, you're here, you're going to be on stage, and communicating this message. But the piece that really stood out to me was having a mature program that reaches across, like you said, not just PCI but some other things. How do you take a mature cybersecurity program and then assess PCI against it? It's kind of the overarching thing that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so I'll jump in from a PCI perspective and then ask Wes to add how we've been able to do that with the other frameworks. So from PCI perspective, because we have so many assessments a year, and we work with multiple QSA firms, we cannot have, it cannot be up to who we're working with to be their preference. So we don't really allow QSA preference on how we manage our assessments. We are monitoring compliance year round. So it's a 12-month program. We are looking for our quarterly scans from first quarter. We have scheduled in when the penetration test must be done. We have a 90-day window that we give to our pen testing team for when they have to have application pen tests and then our network pen tests done. So we aren't getting things just in time for that compliance sprint up the hill to get to a rock. We also work very closely in monitoring how our controls are going. So we've taken PCI, this one framework, I'm really going to say, and turned it into a sustainable program where we have metrics. We are reporting on those on a weekly basis up to leadership so they know how we're doing.
Right.
It feeds into FIS's overall sustainability program.
Okay.
And so we're very much complimented from our risk officers on how they don't worry about PCI because they know that we're monitoring it and we're raising the flag early if there's an issue.
So I find this very interesting because you keep coming back to risk, and it sounds like your program is very much risk-based, which is the concept of doing risk analyses is even more baked into 4.0 than it was into the earlier versions. Tell me a little bit more about the relationship between risk and PCI from your perspective.
Wes, do you mind taking
Sure.
that piece?
That's one of the things that we look at FIS. We have a program of control testing and risk analysis, so that the other team that works with me, control testing team, they perform regular risk analysis and assessments of the various products that we do, and their information then feeds into Chelsea's program with PCI. So the key to us is that, it's not just a project, right? This is a program that we've developed. We overlap between our different programs that we have. And so evidence that we get in a control testing assessment or a SOC report or an ISO 27001 assessment, we can then leverage that assessment, the collateral from different programs across to the PCI environment, making it even stronger because we have multiple entities that are doing the same kind of reviews, but they're leveraging the work between the different programs.
Yep, very interesting. So a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, this seems like a very, very mature program and at a different state than what a lot of small merchants are. And so when we look at a maturity model, is that something you're familiar with, the different maturity model levels? And because I think that a lot of the merchants that we talk to are really at that base, just getting their feet wet and may not even have performed a risk assessment yet. And so I'm looking at, how do we kind of tie this to what that level of maturity would be?
We actually, in our presentation tomorrow, we'll be talking through the maturity levels. And we go from the initial level of nothing defined and what is this through an optimized program. So we talk through what those steps look like. Now, what I want to say is an understanding, we didn't get here overnight. This has been a lot of years in the works and a lot of effort between, I'm going to say, myself and my peers that report up through Wes, of us actually saying we are going to do an evidence repository and we're feeding things in there as we're getting it. We have gotten, I'm going to jump through because we still are at that maturity level, but we have gotten so much buy-in from our business and operational partners that they are feeding in things early. So then they have it in there and say, oh yeah, you need it for SOC, here it is. You need it for PCI, here it is. But we did not start this way. And 10 years ago, we were, I would say, really at that initial level of treating everything individually. And, I have this, I have this SOC audit that's coming up, but I just got done with PCI. And having to have my peer that does our SOC audits go in, give them a list, and they essentially get the, this is the first time I've ever heard it. That took a couple years to get beyond that. And then we were really we were kind of getting into a repeatable process where we could repeat success. And we could repeat success from a PCI standpoint, and then separately we could repeat a success from a SOC standpoint, but we did not have that coordination between the two. I would say from an operational side, that was a big push in not just from risk management, and risk management at FIS includes cybersecurity and information security. So we treat it as risk, but it wasn't just coming out of the risk organization. It was really bought in by operations saying, we're hitting audit fatigue. We're having to provide the same thing multiple times. Can you guys figure out a way to share the information? Because I shouldn't be having to give it to Chelsea and then to Scott and then to Sean. You guys all work together. You can work it out.
Right.
And it comes from trying to lessen that fatigue.
The key to a good maturity program is planning, right? And that's
Right.
what Chelsea does very well with the program, is that she knows what's going to come up. She doesn't wait until 90 days before an assessment's due and let me just grab everything together. She's got regular checklists that she does every quarter. She requires things. She's asking for the collateral that she's going to need. She's checking to make sure that all of the boxes are being checked, as
Right.
it were. So I think the key there is the planning it appropriately. Even smaller merchants can plan. They may not have a
Right.
a large risk-based program like we do today, but planning it out and knowing what's coming up next, making sure that things are in place as you go along through the year and not waiting until the annual assessment comes due.
So I like how you put that, looking at the operational team, they have jobs to do. And as a third party coming into a lot of different organizations, I see in some cases where the team that's trying to, deal with the compliance or even the risk team and compliance teams will not have the best relationship with the operational team. It's almost always because, like you said, they're being repeatedly asked for things, and it makes it hard for them to do their day-to-day while supplying these things over and over again. And so you said it took you about 10 years. So how did you start out? How did you start?
So one of my strengths is winning over others. We've done the Clifton Strengths test, and so I have woo in there built in. Woo means winning over others.
Okay.
I have spent a tremendous amount of time building relationships with people, and some come easy and some are more difficult. And I will not lie, we've had some crotchety old developers that have been developing since the 60s that it's like, you're the new kid on the block. What do you have to do?
Yeah.
I have spent time getting to know them and explaining what I need and explaining what I don't need. And so to the point where I've built that relationship. So when they get a request, if it's not coming from me, they will ask me, is this legitimate and what do I provide? It could be something outside of PCI. It could be for some other group, but I'll tell them, yes, it's legitimate. This is what they're asking for. Please be nice. And so we've gotten that. So it's really been a lot of relationship building.
Okay.
And I would also say showing that benefit and that, we're not just turning things over and walking away. I have in the past been known to throw things on people's calendars that if there's a deliverable every 90 days, it slips our mind.
Yeah.
And we all know we get busy doing what is the fire burning closest to us.
Yeah.
And so I still have things on my calendar that I had put there in 2014 on when scans were going to come in. So I knew, okay, the Norcross scan just ran. Make sure Ken has it, and if it's make sure it's like what the results are. If it's passing, we know we're good. And if it was a failure, then I'm following up to say, what are we doing? How quick are we getting the tickets to resolve this? I still have some of those that are legacy, and I know I get it once a month. I'll have a scan pop up, and I'm like, I could probably remove that at this point, but it's just ingrained, and I know it's on their calendar.
Right.
So building out those calendar things that, it's not necessarily my responsibility. Nor is it something that I should ultimately be worried about 365 days a year. But if I have set those reminders to ask the question, it makes sure that we don't drop it. And I've got to the team that we have, they know it's coming. So there's things that have just become ingrained that they know, it's coming up to the 15th of the month. I need to make sure I have X. But it's that extra reminder on the calendar to remind them, let me make sure I have it so it does not fall off. And we don't lose that time frame, because a lot of things are period based. And if we don't get something done in that time frame, you can't recreate it.
No.
You can't go back 3 months. So it's making sure that we have those flags.
Right.
And we've taught them the value of us working ahead like this. So they understand that if we miss something, then their certification will be in jeopardy. And so it's important to them that we say, we're doing this for your clients. Your clients want to see your PCI certification. So therefore, let's make sure that we stay on track, that we keep you abreast of all the things you need to know about. We'll do the heavy lifting, and we'll make sure that things are managed with the QSA. But the business operations team understands the importance of them staying on that track and keeping the schedule.
Right. And I think that there's a lot of value to what you said earlier, where you said it's not necessarily your responsibility. But what I'm hearing from you is just because you're not the ultimate accountable person doesn't mean you don't contribute to the success of something happening.
Correct.
And so, but it's hard to get there.
It has been very hard to get there. Yes, we've had to have a lot of buy-in from the operations team. We've had to have a lot of discussions about this is the importance of your certification. We've even had some clients who have talked to the operations along the way and said, I need this certification, I need it now, and if you can't give it to me, then we're going to have an issue. So I think sometimes that pressure on the operations team, that they've seen that from their clients, that's okay, now we need to listen to our risk management team a little more. We need to help them when they need collateral, when they have questions raised. And so it's made it much easier from us as a risk management department.
So helping the operations team know the value of something to other people, how their work affects other people.
Yes.
You find that to be a successful...
Yes, because they now see what the requirements are from their clients. They understand how working with us to help us provide the information to take care of the QSA requests that they've put in, that gives them the opportunity then to go back to focusing on their operational side, because they're also sharing that same information with us, the importance of operations. We can't miss our service level agreements. And so therefore, anything they can do to shift the work to us, they're willing to do, as long as we're running from a risk management standpoint and helping them to get their certifications, keep the compliance level up.
Okay. So as we talked about earlier, it starts with planning, but just the planning isn't enough to create that mature process. One of the things that I've seen in the more mature organizations is that when there is a gap or a question or a place of conflict, rather than letting that escalate into a negative thing, they have already built-in processes that they use those moments to improve what they have going on. Is that something that you've seen as well? An improvement of process, like the OODA loop, or how do you take what you have and improve that?
I would say it's an ongoing process. I mean, we have regular forums that we bring together all the stakeholders, and I think that the discussions are important. So Chelsea runs a monthly forum just to bring all the stakeholders together and say, these are the key things we need to be on the lookout for. These are changes that are coming in PCI 4.0. These are things that we may have had an issue with in the recent transactions. Whatever it might be, she's bringing the entire group together and opening that up. What do you have questions on? Where do you see concerns? How can we keep this communication going?
So I'll just add on that. So we do that. We have a weekly reporting and a weekly. We do a half-hour discussion of everything that's in flight. So of our program, and walk through where we are and are there common challenges. And a lot of times we'll run through where it's like the theme of the week with what's going on, and how. Again, that ultimate responsibility and accountability is on our operational partners. But how can we lessen that burden on them, and how can we add efficiency? So one area that we do a lot of is, again, I'm going to focus on our penetration testing. With the amount, with the number of assessments that we have in a given year, and having more than 500 individual applications in scope for PCI,
it's a lot.
There is a lot of penetration testing, and then our network testing. And then as a service provider, we are subject to doing we have segmented network. So having those segmentation tests done every 180 days. So we, rather than having individual business units trying to reach out to our penetration testing team, we meet with them once a week also to talk through what's going on, what findings if they have some common findings that we need to be communicating out to the operational teams around the globe, but also making sure we're getting things done within the prescribed timeframes and trying to lessen that burden on our operational teams. So once they get a vulnerability, we can't vulnerabilities don't get remediated overnight for the most part. They're going to take coordination between our service delivery team, our technology teams, and the developers actually coding the change. And so we're trying to build in those runways.
Right.
So we do our weekly forum. We do have a monthly town hall. And we contribute to the overall risk sustainability program. So we actually give PCI updates biweekly on those meetings.
Oh, okay.
Of where we are, what challenges we're seeing, And it's attended by our chief risk officer, by our leadership within the risk management and IT areas. So they're hearing firsthand what challenges we're facing, and we're able to get the right resources allocated as needed.
So communication is a big key there.
Yes, it is.
Not just the planning, but also communicating what's being done and when and why.
And what we're expecting, things that are coming up. We don't want anything to be a surprise. So if we're planning ahead, communicating with our teams, communicating with the operational business, then things go much smoother along the way.
So I'll bet we have a lot of I'll bet we have a lot of listeners who are thinking, this sounds great. I would love to have this. Mm-hmm. But having been part of developing this for quite a few years, what are the things they need to be aware of that could stop their progress in developing it? Are there some gotchas or some difficulties?
There's always the challenge of buy-in. And I'm going to say, and it's buy-in at every level. Mm-hmm. So we may have buy-in at our leadership level, and generally we get the buy-in there, and it's how we trickle that down, mm-hmm. And get buy-in along the way, where people and we're going to go down to the lower level employees, and they may still be managers or directors, so they're not brand new. But they have a lot of pressure coming from different areas, and mm-hmm. how we're able to work. That's one of the biggest challenges is that competition for resources. Mm-hmm. So how do we balance what we want to do from a revenue or from a growth perspective mm-hmm. versus what we want to do from an efficiency standpoint of reducing the pressure from compliance? Mm. And I don't know that we've ever. That's a regular kind of balancing act. So we haven't. I will say we haven't totally figured that out. It's just a matter of having to help work through prioritizations.
And that probably comes back again to the communication mm-hmm. piece you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
The other thing that we do very well, and I would say any organization can do this. So it doesn't matter. I would say it doesn't matter where you are on the maturity scale. We also celebrate our wins. So when we get through an assessment, and I've said, we have a lot, we send out congratulations to the team. Nice. And we send that all the way up to our executive leadership mm-hmm. team that who has team members responsible in that. Mm-hmm. So we're celebrating. We've achieved compliance for the year. We have met our obligations with our clients, and thank you. And we will get senior level people that are replying back to that email and saying, "Great job, team." And I think those congratulations go a long way. So there's a lot of pressure when things are going bad, but we're able to celebrate when we've achieved success.
Excellent. One of the questions I get asked is, are there tools out there that we can use? Because sometimes people want to kind of shortcut or even augment communication with tools. And I'm wondering, are tools important? Is there, tools that support these types of planning and communication, or do you think that's less critical?
So we don't use any extraordinary tools to do this, right? We're using normal communications tools, Teams meetings, Slack channels, emails, things like that. We run a lot of spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, SharePoints, things to collaborate and bring data together, mm-hmm. bring our collateral into a common repository. So, normal tools like that are used, and that's the way we communicate and collaborate with our teams. We're not going out and buying an expensive tool that requires us to go in and build new formats and things like that. So those are basically the standard things we're using. Chelsea, do you have anything else that you use?
No, really. I mean, we manage through spreadsheets and SharePoint mm-hmm. sites, and I know that in this day and age, it shocks people. But the challenges that we run into is, tooling is very expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just the initial purchase. Plus, then we have to have the staff to keep it going mm-hmm. and that maintenance program and how we do configurations and stuff. So it's worked for us for many years. And it's, I mean, it's that balancing act. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, Excel and SharePoint and buy-in from the people that have been doing this for a while. That, you know, if somebody new comes in, we say, here is our process and this is what we follow. So we have some documentation on our processes that we'll share and what the expectation is. So we're managing it really that way.
So I'm fascinated a little bit by the broad spectrum of things that you have to or choose to assess against or be compliant with. Sometimes I'll run into groups that say, well, our PCI policies, procedures, security tools, that's all over here. It's separate from our other security and compliance programs. And I just wonder, is that been your experience? Do you need to separate them out like that?
From our standpoint, we want everybody at the table together. Chelsea and her counterparts sit together. We meet. We talk about challenges they're having. Sometimes a challenge that Chelsea's having may be something that somebody else has already solved, or Chelsea may have a solution for someone else. There are cases where Chelsea says, I need to get something from the business, and somebody says, I'm doing an assessment of that group next week. I can get that document for you. So by combining the teams together and the way we work our assurance and testing, we're bringing all the different aspects of these groups together so they can work together to solve the issues that come up.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add on that. We do collaborate a lot. My program is really an oversight function, but I have a peer that does our risk assessments and our control testing. So when we were talking through one of the PCI requirements is that we have to do quarterly validations of select controls and make sure that those are operating effectively. I have actually been able to lean on my peer that does the control testing team. They are testing those 5 areas for us every quarter, producing a report. And so if there are non-compliance areas, they're recording it and we're working through those remediation items, but it feeds directly into the PCI program overall. And we've done that also with ISO, with my peer that runs our ISO program. If they're going to a site or they identify something, they will flag my team and say, hey, we saw this thing, this is questionable. Are you aware of it? And so we're able to look at having more, I'm going to say more boots on the ground, but we all have, you know, we're looking at things a little differently, but we've also done the control mappings between those where I will see something and say, hey, I think this is one of the ISO controls you need to worry about. And so we are taking things not as siloed or treating them as separate. We come back to our overall security policies and where we may need to, where we want to make sure we share that information.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming and talking to me today. I know that there are a lot of people who probably are thinking, well, how do I increase the maturity of my program? How do I get more cross-communication across the different groups? Is there any kind of last pieces of advice that you could give people as they develop that?
I would say I will have you, Wes. We are within Wes's org. I guess I'll take the first part. Within Wes's Wes's org, there's 5 of us with 5 different areas of concern that we work on.
Right.
And we collaborate weekly. We share information. If there's a new policy, we're publishing it out and saying, hey, you might need to look at this. And also with our operational business partners. So we have relationships with different groups, and so we're able to leverage each other's network.
Okay.
So I would say that's one area. Wes does this beyond just what our team does and is helping evangelize our messages out within the organization. So I know you do some more.
Sure. And I think it goes back to the planning aspect of it, right? Maturity doesn't just happen. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of getting to where you want to be. And if you don't have a plan of where you want to go, then you're not going to reach it. So we plan it, we communicate, we collaborate. That's the key for the maturity program that we've been able to reach, is that bringing the right resources together, talking about where we want to go, and making sure that we have a plan to get there.
All right. Thank you so much. This is a lot of valuable information, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jen. We've enjoyed it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of SecurityMetrics podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.